I want to talk about COVID. You were a nurse on the front lines in COVID?
Not in the front lines.
Okay.
I was in case management at that time.
Okay.
Working remotely.
Okay.
So I was already working out of my home.
Okay.
And then I go with my patients to their appointments. But I was not on the floor in the ER taking all the incoming. No.
Did you have close friends, colleagues?
Many. Yes, many.
Can you explain the experience of what COVID may have been like for a nurse working on the front lines?
It was overwhelming. Absolutely overwhelming. And here's to play devil's advocate on the vaccines. Early on, people were like, get the vaccine. It'll keep you from getting COVID. Yep. That's what they said at first.
They said it'll keep you from getting it and it will not let you transmit it.
Yes. And maybe they believed that at the time, because stuff happens, more data comes out and maybe it changed and they didn't tell us. Maybe that's then the problem.
It's a crazy statement to make if you don't actually know it.
Right. Well, I think a lot of the reason that they did that in the beginning, maybe they believed that, but even if they didn't and they wanted everyone to get vaccinated, is because they didn't want to overwhelm the system.
Yep. Which makes sense.
Because they were overwhelmed.
Yep.
And I had friends that didn't even have the protective gear that they needed because the system was so overwhelmed. Because so those N95 masks, you had to wear them all shift long.
Yep.
And the hospital didn't have enough. So just for people who don't know, the way that there's a way to don and doff a mask.
Oh, okay.
To put it on and take it off. So let's say there's two kinds of masks and there's different precautions. So say you come in, someone, and they've got respiratory symptoms. Let's say they have COVID, and they're going to put you on certain precautions. And I think early on they were putting them on airborne precautions, which means you use that N95 mask. It's a very specific mask that you have to be fitted for annually. So all these people out here buying them, I don't even know that they had the right one and that if it fit them properly, but whatever. And so you have to gown up. You put on your gown, you put on your gloves, I think, and then you put on the mask that you were fitted for. There's only two. And then you go in, and then when you leave that room, you take off your gown, and then you take the mask off and you put it in the trash. And then you wash your hands or do your alcohol, depending on the precautions. They were so... And then if you have to go into that room or into another room that has those precautions, you're putting it on and off, and you're throwing masks away left and right. Well, during COVID, at least early on, they didn't have enough masks.
Yeah.
So the nurses, at least the ones that I talked to, not all of them, they were recycling masks.
Oh, no.
And so they would get one mask per shift.
Oh, wow.
And have to put it in a paper bag and put it in their pocket, like when they came out of the room. And that is not how you're taught to don and off masks. But in the hospital's defense, we don't have the masks.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily, how were they supposed to anticipate a pandemic and needing millions of masks? So I get both parts. I forgot what the original question was. Oh, being on the front lines. And so maybe that's wise because the systems, they were overwhelmed with patients. Nowhere to put them, nowhere to go. There's only so many ICUs. There's only so many ventilators.
Yep.
So I get that.
Yep.
That was a real thing that was happening. So I'm willing to believe that they thought in the beginning that it didn't, it would keep you from getting it and it would keep you from spreading it.
Yep.
At some point, I don't know if it was early or later, that became to be known to be untrue.
Correct.
And they weren't forthright about it.
At all.
Right.
They tried to hide it.
Right.
That was the point in which my trust in government really took a steep turn, or a steep drop, I would say. Because you'd see videos of Fauci saying you can't get it and you can't transmit it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, well, that's not true at all.
Right.
So that was like a...
And at some point he said, we're not sure how helpful the masks were.
Yep.
And
6 feet was just a rule, just made up.
Was kind of arbitrary.
Yes.
At best.
And the thing that really... There are many things that bother me about it. One of the biggest ones is, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, there were many nurses who chose not to get the vaccine who were fired from their jobs, and police officers and firefighters and military personnel. What are your thoughts on that? Like, do you do you know anyone who lost their job as a result of it? Like, do you think that was a valid thing for people to lose their jobs over, for choosing not to get the vaccine? I mean, these are people who were on the front lines working tirelessly.
Yeah.
To me, it seems crazy, but I don't know. Like, I couldn't imagine someone losing their job who fought to keep people alive because they chose not to get the vaccine. To me, that seems crazy.
Well, I personally don't know anyone who lost their job because
Okay.
of it. I've heard of it on social media,
Yep.
like everyone, but personally, I don't know of anyone. I think, I mean, for comparison, so before COVID, what did you have? You had the flu. So how would the hospitals handle the flu with their nurses? At the hospital I worked at, a team would come by to give you the flu vaccine. You could decline it as a nurse if you wanted to, but if you did that, you would have to wear one of those masks, not the N95, but the other mask,
Yep.
for the entire flu season.
Okay.
So you could decline it. The COVID vaccine, I don't think anyone should have lost their job.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, my biggest pet peeve with this entire thing to this day is that if you had COVID, it counts for nothing. Like, they're like, oh, we want you to get vaccinated. Get vaccinated. Well, I had COVID.
I've already got the antibodies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Doesn't
better
matter.
than the vaccine.
Doesn't even matter. That counted for nothing. And to me, out of the entire thing, that is what made the least amount of sense.
Yeah. That makes you question intent.
You're like, that doesn't make sense. I just had it. I have antibodies. And so devil's advocate, what the other side would say is like, well, we don't have a way to measure your body's response. Maybe you didn't have a big enough response to the COVID that you got. And you're like, well, you're not measuring it for the vaccines either.
Yeah, correct.
So that doesn't make sense.
It's not logically consistent.
It's not logically consistent. And even to this day, if you go on and say you were a person early on who was like, I don't want to get the vaccine. I'm not sure. I don't know. And by now you're like, you know what? Enough time has passed. There are new vaccines that are like regular vaccines that are not the mRNA. I feel more comfortable getting that. I think I want to proceed with getting the COVID vaccine. Maybe that's a decision you've made for yourself. Well, if you go on the website and if you go on there and they say, if you've never been vaccinated, I think the regular vaccine is still a 2-shot thing.
Yep.
If you go on there and say you've never been vaccinated, you have to get 3 shots. You have to get a makeup shot. Nowhere on there does it say, but wait, I've had COVID.
Right.
How does that not count at least for one?
Yeah.
Doesn't count.
And that's not standard for any other vaccine if you've had like the flu or any of that.
Well, I don't really know. I don't know that it ever really came up with the flu.
Yeah.
Because flu wasn't as big of a deal.
Right.
And then other vaccines like MMR, I mean, that stays in your system and you draw titers to make sure that you still have antibodies. So it's apples to oranges.
Interesting. Okay.
So I'm not sure, honestly, but it just stands to reason if I've had it. And even the CDC says, if you've had COVID, you should not get a vaccine.
Correct.
What is it, 90 days?
Yep.
At least that's what the guidance was a couple of years ago. I'm not sure what it is
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But even back then, I had a friend. She was like, I just had COVID in January. For her to come back to work in February, she lacked a booster or
Yep.
something like that. They're like, you have to get a booster. She's like, I just had it.
Right.
Like January.
Right.
It's February. Like I shouldn't be getting it according to the CDC's own guidance.
Correct.
They weren't following that.
And it seemed to me, it's a blatant disregard for individual liberty and health over their body. That for me is a major issue.
That's true, but other vaccinations are required, and they always have been.
So I have no issues with requiring some vaccinations. I have no issue with that.
Yeah.
I got the COVID vaccines. I actually had a negative reaction to it.
Okay.
I have no issue with that. For me, knowing what we know around it not stopping transmission, and it doesn't prevent you from getting it, doesn't prevent you from transmitting it.
Yeah.
It's for your friend who had COVID in January to then be forced and required to inject the vaccine into her there's always a risk with the vaccine.
Right.
Like even though like the net for certain populations very helpful and very important, there's always a risk when you're injecting something in your body, always, for any number of reasons. So that for me is a major issue. for someone who's like being forced to get a vaccine
Right.
when they just had COVID.
Right.
That's a big issue for me.
Yeah. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like, explain it to me. And I think people in the hospital's defense, I think they were afraid.
Afraid of what?
Afraid of, well, that's a good question. I mean, what would happen if they didn't? What would have happened if hospitals stood up and said, we're not making our people get vaccinated? What would have happened to them? I don't know the answer.